In 2 months, I made more progress than in the entire previous year, and I didn't have to spend all day practicing. So in this video, I'm going to show you the simple practice routine that got these results, how much time it actually takes, and exactly how to use it to learn music 6 times faster. Because this didn't just work for me, I've seen the same strategies work for thousands of my students too. But what's interesting is that while these changes unlock massive progress, they didn't magically fix everything. Some problems stuck around, and I'll share what changed and what still needed work. And while I'm going to give you a whole load of ideas here, you don't need to use every single one. Even picking a couple could change everything for you. But I would encourage you to listen to all of them, because it was combining these that made the real difference for me. Let me show you how things used to look for me. I was practicing pretty consistently. I was keen, squeezing in some practice before work every morning. But it was very ad hoc, no real plan. So some days I'd leap out of bed at 7 a.m. and get right to it. Other days I'd hit snooze thinking, I'll practice later. Sometimes I managed 10 minutes practice, sometimes much longer. And it felt good in the moment. But over time, the results just weren't coming. I felt like I was standing still while others were sprinting ahead. And eventually, I started to wonder, is this the problem? Am I holding myself back by winging it? So I made a deal with myself. For 1 month, I'd plan out a proper system and follow it. I figured I'll give it a month. If it works, great. If not, I'll go back to my old way. And it turns out that decision to go all in, to ask what would it really mean to give this my best shot, was one of the best I ever made. But you don't need to make a scary big commitment like I did. I'm going to show you the exact changes I made so you can see what really worked and skip the stuff that didn't make a difference. Step 1 is set up for success. For years, I'd waste time every morning getting started. I might have a vague idea that I wanted to work on scales, for example, but then I still had to decide all the details, find any necessary materials before I could even get started. But the lost time wasn't nearly the worst of it. Once I actually got playing, my levels of concentration were already partly shot, and I couldn't be fully present with the music. But everything changed when I started planning tomorrow's session the night before. Not just a general idea, but a detailed list of what I'd work on, for how long and why. And suddenly, I could show up and get straight to work. No wasted energy, no decision fatigue. Lots of my students think they're already doing this, but when I ask them, it's immediately clear their plans are too vague. For example, practice scales isn't anywhere near specific enough. Instead, try practice the D major scale, starting from the root, go up in thirds with staccato articulation. When you do this, you don't just get more done, you get better results from everything you work on. Because now, all your focus is on playing, not figuring out what to do next. So tonight, write down exactly what you'll do tomorrow. Make it specific. You'll be amazed at how much more progress you make and how much easier it feels. Because although being just a little bit more focused sounds like a relatively small thing, it's actually hard to overstate just how important this is for learning music. Because the amount of progress you can make is limited by the amount of focus you're able to bring to the table. So anything we can do to make it easier and more automatic for you to stay focused is like gold dust. And as we go over the other changes I made, you'll see that a lot of them were simply aimed at allowing me to stay at maximum focus automatically without effort. And that didn't happen by accident, because what really counts is not just time spent practicing, or even time spent practicing the right things. It's about being able to turn up with incredibly powerful focus. Step 2, pick the right destination. Even the best practice plan is pointless unless you know exactly what you're aiming for. Without a clear goal, you can fill your schedule with loads of beautiful little details, but they're not actually moving you towards anything. A hugely important step for me was getting specific about exactly what I wanted, to play jazz in small groups at a high level. And once I had that long-term vision giving me a general direction, I needed a short-term target too, a milestone that was close enough to aim at accurately. In this case, it was about playing confidently and impressively at jam sessions in the next few months. With those in place, my motivation soared, and that made it easy to get out of bed every day and get down to work. Even more importantly, every practice session now had a clear purpose. I stopped wasting time on things that didn't matter right now. No more guilt about not practicing other styles or chasing technique. I knew that for that jam session milestone, the important things were playing simple melodic solos, improving my rhythmic feel, and mastering a small number of specific tunes. So I could focus on just those 3 high impact areas and make real progress. Step 3, heightened focus and urgency. So even with a clear plan, I found myself losing focus, spending way too long on one thing and running out of time for the rest. And I fixed this by using timers. I started breaking my practice sessions into short, focused blocks, sometimes as little as a minute for tricky technical bits and up to 20 minutes for a deeper creative topic. But most things were around 5 minutes each. And this was really helpful in making sure I didn't get stuck on one topic and neglect the others. But it had a second, unexpected effect that turned out to be even more important. Using timers kept my focus razor sharp. I was never bored because I always knew a fresh topic would be coming along in a minute or two. And on the contrary, it actively heightened my concentration because I knew I had to make every second count before I'm forced to move on to the next thing. And that kept my motivation up as well. When I didn't get through everything I wanted, I was excited to come back to practice the next day because it felt like I had unfinished business. Step 4, lock in a powerful structure. Because I didn't stop at mapping out the individual topics. Another key part of my new approach was to fix the overall structure of the entire session in a way that I could repeat every day, with a clear start, finish, and built-in breaks. And for me, that meant practicing first thing in the morning, every morning, no excuses. I'd get up, do my first chunk of practice, have breakfast as I took a break, then another practice chunk, then shower during a second break, followed by a final practice chunk before I'd walk straight out the door to work. Boom, done. And it was all mapped out precisely so I never had to think about when or how long to practice for. And having the breaks planned out in advance was crucial. I'd carefully scheduled them so I always stopped practicing before I lost focus. It's much better to take a few minutes off early and come back fresh than to push a bit too far. Now, I was practicing for 2 hours in total a day here, but you don't have to do anything like that much to see great results. Even 10 minutes can transform your playing. What counts is doing it consistently, and that means you've got to choose something sustainable. So, is there a time of day you could set aside for regular focused practice, even if it's just 10 minutes? If so, make it a fixture and buckle in for some seriously rapid progress. Step 5, track what's working in real time. Because there's one more absolutely vital thing I did outside the practice sessions that made a huge difference. Most musicians practice in a vacuum for months before they finally get a chance to discover whether it's really delivered the real world results they're hoping for, and most likely they get a nasty shock. But by then it's too late. If you want to avoid that, you'll need some sort of real-time feedback loop. And for me, I started going to jam sessions every week and recording the results. Listening back felt like it was stopping me spending time on actual real practice, but it was actually one of the most valuable things I've ever done. It made all my future practice more effective. Why? Because you can't judge your playing accurately in the moment. Your brain is too busy putting all its effort into actually playing the notes. So when I listened back to those recordings, I could spot exactly how to tweak my practice sessions. If something wasn't improving, I'd adjust my exercises. If I discovered a new weakness, I'd add that to my practice plan. And if I nailed something, I knew it was time to move on and tackle the next challenge. Now, let's understand why this worked so well. Almost everything I've explained so far was helping me do one of 3 things. Work on the right things, do it with intense focus, and sustain this over a long period of time. And when you combine all 3, the results are incredible. Most of the individual tactics I used aren't particularly sexy, and each seems tiny on its own, but they add up to something wonderful, because those little bits of friction are no trouble for you to push through on a good day. It's not hard to stay focused when you feel on it, but nowhere near all of your days will be good days. There will be loads of times when you don't feel like practicing, loads of times when you can't seem to bring the energy and the focus. So it's really important to set things up in a way that you can win every day. This approach allowed me to practice 2 hours a day, every day, for over 2 years. I stayed focused, motivated, and moving directly toward my goals. And when I set out, I'd never imagined I'd have kept it going for that long, let alone love doing it. But you have to be honest with yourself. 2 hours a day was a big commitment for me back then, but I was totally up for it. I was young, keen, and willing to make all the necessary trade-offs. But now, not a chance. I'm aiming for more like half an hour a day, and that's okay. What's dangerous is if you lie to yourself and say, sure, I'm up for doing 2 hours a day, when you're not. In that case, you might never get started, or you'll burn out quickly. When, if you just dialed your plans back to 10 minutes a day, you might have kept that going for years and made incredible progress. Consistency beats intensity every time. So don't feel you need to go all in, and don't be afraid to start small. You can always add more later. Pick 1 or 2 changes, commit to them, and build from there. Don't wait for the perfect time. Just start now and let a tiny bit of practice every day grow and grow and grow. But this isn't purely a success story. There's a sting in the tail, because the big surprise for me was that even though I made huge technical progress at home, melodic solos, rock solid rhythm, so many of the things I'd been hankering after, my performances were still not great when it mattered. They improved a bit, but not much. And that's what really brought home to me just how big a deal the mental game of performing music is. I'd get nervous, lose focus, or start criticizing myself the minute I was on stage, no matter how well I played at home. I just couldn't bring my best when people were listening. And that's when I realized that all the good work I'd done on improving my physical technique was going to be wasted unless I backed it up with an equal improvement in my mental game. So check out this video next, where I share the most important things I learned from helping over 3,500 musicians to perform like pros.